Hello, welcome to the YouTube series on the beginning of the Tiripini circuit. I am Rudolf Hertle. My father was the first Lutheran missionary to enter the Wiru area. I am here to tell you the story. This part is called The Baptism, Part 2. On Friday, the 29th of May 1970, the first baptism in Tiripini was celebrated. This would never have taken place would there not have been the first baptism in Yalibu on Pentecost 1963, which was a milestone for the whole area. 400 members were baptized at that day, but approximately 3,000 to 4,000 people attended. They came from all directions, from Vabi, Wiru, Alkena. The station translator too, Purapa, was baptized. The huge baptism made a lasting impression on the people at that time. Now, 1,150 people were being baptized in Tiripini. Early in the morning, you could see and hear the people singing hymns. They were all wanting to start early and to have the ceremony completed before the heat of the day and a possible rain shower in the afternoon. Besides, it was a rainy season, and as a rule, you could always count on rain every day around 4 p.m. At 8:30, the procession made its way to the ceremonial grounds. Bishop Dr. Kuda led the procession, followed by the district president of the Hagen district, Yatuselik Mambu. Then came the missionary, the pastors, and the evangelist. At last, the 1,000 baptismal candidates, all dressed in spotless white garments, entered the scene, singing the baptismal hymn. Oh, fathers, brothers and sisters, Jesus in heaven is opening the door and calls us to enter. As many as we are, come along and let's go. Let's go along the path of Jesus. We, as a small group, we want to stay close to Jesus and remain under his protective wings. Then Dr. Kuda went to the pulpit. His sermon was translated by Yoga, who is now called Yapituku, which means he makes it easy. The sermon was amplified by a loudspeaker. The text came from the letter of Ephesians chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. It reads, "Remember, at that time you were apart from Christ. You were foreigners, and you did not belong to God's chosen people. You had no part in the covenant, which was based on God's promise to his people, and you lived in this world without hope and without God. But now, in union with Jesus Christ, you, who used to be far away from him, have been brought near to the sacrificial death of Christ." Then the president of Tiripini circuit, Purapa Pumape, who was also the other chief translator of Tiripini, held the liturgy for the baptism. Then the actual baptism was performed. 8 pastors and missionaries performed the baptism to groups of 40 to 50 candidates. On the whole, 15 pastors and missionaries baptized 1,150 people from 9 villages, some of whom were formerly enemies. It was most probably the biggest baptism in the history of the Lutheran Church in Papua New Guinea. In addition, some Roman Catholic women were changed memberships to Lutheran Church. as they had married Lutheran husbands. Before the heat of the day at 1 p.m., the service had come to an end. For the rest of the day, the people were busy getting everything ready for the big feast, which would be given next day. To the surprise of all, the day ended with sunshine, and not a drop of rainfall fell. People thanked God for this goodness. The special guests were now given a treat with a special meal, and later on coffee and cake. My mother was grateful for the help of the other missionaries and their wives who volunteered to take care of the catering. This enabled her to participate in the whole service. There were a considerable number of special guests, 18 to be exact, including the Assistant District Commissioner, Mr. Barber, and his wife. The rest of the day, the people were getting ready the food and get everything done for the big feast. Vegetables were peeled, pigs were slaughtered, and the moo fireplaces were erected ready to kindle then early next day. Early in the morning, Saturday the 30th May, the stacked and piled wood piles for the moo were set on fire. It took half a day until the meal was done. Then the piles of food were put on specially designed food stretchers and carried by 2 to 4 men to the feasting on the ground. My father counted 100 food stretchers. Everyone on the station was given a share. The Catholics, the government, the missionaries. There's no record how many pigs were slaughtered, but my father received so much meat and food that he by no means was able to cope with the amount. The food was consequently distributed to teachers, evangelists, and household help. Nothing was spoiled. The big feast reminded everyone of the olden days. Everyone ate to his heart's content. And now on Sunday, the 31st of May, most visitors had already left. The newly baptized Christians still slept in their temporary houses for that night, and then celebrated their first service as Christian congregation. The president of the lay district, Gedisa, gave the sermon. My parents were particularly happy that he was chosen to give the sermon because he himself had served as an evangelist in an area of newly converted Christians in Mumwing. And he had shown great interest to place evangelists from the Yavin district into the Tiripini area when work had started to begin. He chose a text from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 2, the verses 42 and 47. And there it says, "And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, and the fellowship, and the breaking of the bread, and the prayers. And the Lord added their number day by day, those who were being saved." The baptism had been celebrated, and now the new Christians needed to devote themselves to the teaching. It was obvious work needed to go on. There was no time to sit down idly and relax. So much work lay ahead. The young congregation needed guidance. It needed elders. And these church elders were installed into their office on that very same day in a moving ceremony. In general, they were those men who were responsible for the mission work in their own villages. And very often, they were the traditional leaders of the villages as such. On the whole, 25 church elders were installed into their office. After the service, 100 further candidates had requested to be baptized. They had been requested to wait until all requirements had been fulfilled. Nearly all villages in the area had now asked for baptism. The next one would be the village Karane. Up to this time, work had concentrated on this one big baptism. But now, 3 classes from different villages needed training. Work would go on until the last villages of the Wiru would have its baptismal service. These last 4 days were without the doubt the highlight in the work of my parents in Tiripini. The baptism marked the aim of mission work. 10 years of concentrated work lay behind them. 10 years ago, my father entered the Wiru area and started to build the Tiripini mission station. 10 years later, the first Lutheran Christians were baptized. At the end of the same year, the village Karane celebrated its first baptism. Then my parents left for furlough in Germany. When they returned, the conference posted them in Ogelbing, Mount Hagen. But they also served the Tiripini congregations as long as they were there. 1977, my parents returned to Germany for good. My father received the Queen's Silver Jubilee Medal from the government of Papua New Guinea in recognition of his long and devoted services to Papua New Guinea. He had been working for the Deputy Department and retired 1980. My father passed away at the age of 84 on the 4th of February 1997. My mother lived on to an age of nearly 100 years and succeeded him on the 4th of December 2011. Both of them are buried in the village cemetery in Naindabasal. Now, this was a story of the beginnings of Tiripini Circuit. I hope you have enjoyed this story, and I hope this account has widened the outlook on the past. Without a doubt, much more is to be said, but I will leave it to others to account for the story of Tiripini and how it continued. Every one of us leaves a mark in history. My parents were guided to write the history in Tiripini. They were proud to have been of service in that particularly historical moment of history among the Wiru people, and they considered it a privilege to serve at that time when culture change had affected the lives of people in such a radical way. They invested all of their strength and ability in those years. Both of them looked back on that time in fond memories of the wonderful people they had met and with whom they had the privilege to do their share in building the kingdom of God among the people of the Wiru in the southern highlands of Papua New Guinea. Although this is the last part of the story, one more video is following, and this is called Epilogue. Until then, bye-bye. Hope to see you soon.